Yeah. Radhe Radhe. Good morning, good evening. Welcome to Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita session. Hand over to you, Nitinji. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Sandhya. Thank you, Vijayji, for a wonderful session. Agami Soma Vasare Punah Milama.
Namo Namaha.
Dhanyavad. Bahu Samichanam. All right. Radhe Radhe. Good morning, good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's edition of Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. Hope you had a great weekend. We certainly had a good one. And look forward to another engaging discussion today in today's session. And there's a parallel session going on with Swamiji. I was attending that and I saw some familiar faces there. So it was interesting, but I said, all right, now let me switch to this session. So very warm welcome once again. Let me share my screen. And I don't have the privileges to share the screen. So if somebody can please grant me, that will be very much appreciated. Because I believe that will be needed for the session today. So Ravi ji, I like the picture that you have put in, Ravi B. Okay, I think you'll probably have to make me co-host or host if you can do that. I don't have share privileges right now.
I am a co-host. I can't make you. I think it's Amutavani ji who is JK Yog today.
Amutavani ji, if you can. JK Yog.
Pooja ji or I don't know. Let me try.
Okay, maybe a quick call to Kriti would help.
I'll do that. I'll try. I haven't been able to connect with Kriti ji. I'll try calling Amutavani ji. Now you are the co-host. You have to unmute yourself.
All right. All right. I'm glad it got sorted out. Sorry about that. Let's get started. Let me share my screen and we will get underway. There's a bit of a technical glitch we had because I didn't have the host privileges. So we will get started now. Sorry about that. Let me share my screen. Okay, I'm sharing my screen, sound. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. All right. Okay, we'll get started with our opening prayers and then we will get into the shloka that we're going to discuss today. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Para Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Radhe Radhe, good morning, good evening once again. Let's get started with today's shloka. So today we are on chapter 4, verse 27. And I'm going to recite it and you are welcome to follow along. Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma sanyam yogagnau juhvati jnana deepite. All right. Do we have any?
Yes, Shyamji, Radhe Radhe.
Shyamji.
Radhe Radhe.
Shyamji.
Sarvanindriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma sanyam yogagnau juhavate jnana deepite. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe, very nice, Shyamji. All right, we have few more hands. Let's take.
Yeah, Sumeshji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Nitinji, Radhe Radhe everyone.
Radhe Radhe.
Sarvani indriyani karmani prana karmani chapare atma samyama yogagnau juhvati jnana deepite. Radhe Radhe.
Sumeshi, Radhe Radhe.
Riyaji, Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead.
Radhe Riyaji.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Sarvan indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma sanyama yogagnaho juvati jnana deepate.
Wonderful, Riyaji. Very nice.
Meenakshi ji, Radhe Radhe.
Meenakshi ji, good to see you after a
Radhe
while.
Radhe Radhe. Sarvanindriyakarmani pranakarmani chapare atmasamyamma yogagnau juhvati jnanadipite. Radhe Radhe.
Meenakshi ji, and good to hear you back after a while. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitinji.
Yes, a few more hands.
Yeah, Samji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma sanyam yogagnam jovati jnana deepate. Radhe Radhe.
Very nice, Samji. Looks like you've been practicing. Very nice.
No, not. Thank you. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, Shruti ji.
Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, Shruti ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Sandhya, Radhe Radhe Nitin. Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma sanyam yogagnau juvati jnana deepite. Radhe Radhe.
That was quite fluent. Wonderful. We are all making good progress here. Nice. Okay, let's take the remaining hands as well.
Yeah, Seshu ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Seshu ji.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Sarvanindriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma samyama yogagnau juhati jnana deepite. Radhe Radhe.
Where are you joining us from? Seshu ji, okay. No worries. Let's move on to the next hand. Quickly covered.
Yeah, Lakshmi ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Lakshmi ji.
I'm unable to unmute you. I don't know. Okay. Sakarji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma samyam yogagnau jovati jnana deepite.
Very nice. Radhe Radhe. Where are you joining us from?
I used to live in Seattle. I currently live in Surrey, Canada. So yeah,
Okay.
British Columbia.
Good to hear. It's the first time you're reciting today?
Yeah, on this session, yes. I think I have heard your sessions in the past a couple of times, but yeah.
But I think you're reciting for the first time. So very nice. Thank you.
Yes.
You get the
Thanks.
best debut award as well. So
Thank
I've
you.
lived in Seattle for a while, so it's a beautiful place. All right.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take the last two hands and then we'll get started.
Ashutosh ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Ashutosh ji.
सर्वाणि इन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नो युवति ज्ञानदीपिते.
Wonderful, Ashutosh ji. Okay, Lakshmi ji is back.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe.
Sarvanindriya karmani prana karmani cha pare atma sanyama yogagno johati jnana dipite.
Very
Radhe Radhe.
nice, Lakshmi ji. Wonderful recitation. All right.
Hi.
Thank you. Last but not the least.
Yeah, I'll also go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
सर्वाणि इन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नो जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते.
Very nice. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. A very warm welcome once again. We just completed a beautiful retreat in Fresno with Swamiji. If you're attending online, I'm sure you would have enjoyed the devotional nectar and a lot of knowledge in chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita. Half of it was covered, remaining half will be covered in the Dallas retreat. So strongly recommend to avail that. If you put your noise cancellation headphones, it is as good as being in person. Okay, that is the beauty of technology, and the way the team executes is pretty flawless now. So do check it out, and if you can just keep on hearing that itself, can be a very, very devotional 2 to 3 days that you can gift yourself. Let's get started. The shloka, the short translation for this is: some inspired by knowledge offer the functions of all their senses and their life energy in the fire of the controlled mind. So we will take this opportunity to look at the path of knowledge, what it entails and what it takes actually to even have an eligibility to take on that path. And we will have a fascinating discussion around that as well. So let's get started into the translation of this shloka and concepts around it as well. So the criteria, there's always a criteria for everything, right? Even in the world, if you have to apply for a job, there's a criteria you have to meet. If you have to start your business, there's a criteria you have to meet. Similarly, when in God's paths also, there is a criteria that has been established. What is it that you need to be the bare minimum or the hygiene criteria that is needed for each one of these paths to gain an eligibility into that path? And that is what we are going to have a bit of a discussion on. So criteria, and basically criteria means what is the entry criteria on the path of Gyan Yog. So without that criteria being met, there is no entry. Or even if there is an entry, you're actually beating about the bush until you have met that criteria. Okay, so we will look at it from the Gyana Chakshu or the Shastra Chakshu today. So then there are some yogis who follow the path of discrimination, which is Gyan Yog, and take the help of their knowledge to withdraw their senses from the world, negating the senses as we had seen. That is their way of seeking the truth. Okay. Yogis. And there's another category of it, branch of it, which is called Hat Yogis. Now they try to restrain the senses with brute willpower. It's like me against my own senses kind of a battle they take on. Okay, game on with our own mind. That is called Hat Yoga. And you keep on suppressing them. And that is the way to progress on this path. Now, what they do is the repeated practice of discrimination based on knowledge. Knowledge tells us that negate the senses, I'm the intellect, negate the senses, this, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect. You keep on reiterating it. And this is the practice you follow in Hatha Yoga. And in Gyan Yoga, you look at it from a discrimination. I'm not the body, I'm the soul, I'm that. We'll look at it a little more. And that deep contemplation and then negation of senses is the way in these paths. We have spoken about this. So how is it achieved? The deep contemplation, basically, where you keep on contemplating upon the fact that this world is mithya, illusory nature, mithya they call it, not asat. By the way, there's a difference between mithya and asat as well. Next time you come across this term, mithya is something which is false, which doesn't exist. Asat is something which exists, but it is temporary. So the world is not mithya, as Gyanis say. Right? The concept of Gyanis is this world is illusory. So this world is created by God, but they say it is illusory. It is mithya. It's like that dream that you're having, and once you wake up, the dream doesn't exist. However, scriptures say the world is not mithya. It is a veritable form of God himself. The world is asat, perishable, impermanent. And then they look at their own identity, the self, which is I, us, soul, the divinity. That is who we are, distinct from body, mind, intellect, and ego. Right? If you look at Gyanis, that is what they focus on. And then they withdraw their senses like a tortoise withdraws all of its limbs inside when it senses some danger. And mind is engaged in meditation upon the self. You focus on self. Self-realization basically becomes the goal, with an understanding that self is identical with the supreme identity. Okay? That is a big, what do you call, premise there. So self-realization is the goal, with an understanding that self-realization is equal to God realization. Okay? A Gyani would say that. So if you look at some of the Mahavakyas of Gyanis, Soham, let's look at some of their Mahavakyas. So they chant aphorisms such as Tat Tvamasi, I am that. Chandogya Upanishad says that, by the way. Aham Brahmasmi, I am the supreme entity. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says that. So they focus on the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had. See, when Shankaracharya ji came, he propagated non-dual philosophy. That there's absolutely one entity. Nobody is different. We are also that. That philosophy of non-dualism, monism, basically, was propagated by Shankaracharya. Then came Madhavacharya. He said that duality, we are different from God, because non-dualism could not answer the basic questions like, okay, if we are God, how did we come under Maya? If Maya could overpower God, that means Maya is more powerful than God. If that is the case, then it negates the very definition of God, that God is all powerful. So it could not answer those questions, and those were addressed by Madhvacharya's philosophy, Dvaitvad. It says you are not God. You are part of God. Okay, as a part of God, you are not Satchidanand. You are Anusat, Anuchit, Anuanand. You are not omnipresent. You are not all knowledgeable. So it answered those questions. Then came Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya said, Vishishtadvait. Okay, we are getting a little bit into a deeper philosophy, but I'm sure you are able to follow along. He said Vishishtadvait, conditional Dvait. He said it's like a tree. Tree has a twig, branch, fruit. Although everything is a tree, and yet it is different. Each has its own attribute. So on a mango tree, you will eat a mango. And the pleasure you derive from eating a mango, you cannot get from eating a mango leaf or a mango twig. So he said Vishishtadvait. And then the followers, they started following along and they said, this is the truth. Then finally Kripaluji Maharaj came and he said, all were right, and he reconciled it. So the concept is, the Gyanis, they focus on our scriptures say, Achintya Bheda Bhed Sambandh. Achintya Bheda Bhed Sambandh. He says, with God we have a similarity and yet the difference. And it is said, Achintya means that is something you cannot comprehend, anirvachaniya right now. Just understand it for now. In due course of time, with your realization, you will understand. So we are same as God and yet different. How are we same as God? We are a divine spark, energy of Him. So in that sense, we are same. How are we different? We are not God. We don't have, basically, we are under the spell of Maya, being the Jiva Shakti aspect of it. Right? It's just like sun's rays. When they come into the room, we say sun has come. Has the sun come? No, the rays have come. If the sun actually comes, it'll burn us to ashes. So rays, the surface of sun all are different, and yet they are considered one. Similarly, being energy of God, we are different from God and yet same with God. There is unity in diversity and diversity in unity. Okay, both concepts hold true. Gyanis focus on the abhed aspect of it, where they say we only are the divine. Okay, so that is, they focus only on that aspect. However, our scriptures cover both part. Bheda bhed samman. We are same and yet different. Right? We spoke about this topic in great detail in one of our previous sessions. So if we are not God, we are part of God, but we have the potential to becoming God-like. And there's a process for that. So these vakyas are used by Gyanis, and this is the process that they follow. Now, Shri Bhagavatam, what does Shri Bhagavatam talk about this concept? And Shri Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of all the scriptures. There's nothing beyond Shri Bhagavatam. Right? Vedavyas himself only created after all his literary work was done. All the Upanishads, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Vedant, Brahma Sutra, everything was written. He still had a sense of dissatisfaction. That something is still missing. And then he created Bhagavatam. So let's see what Bhagavatam has to say about that. And Bhagavatam is not an ordinary scripture. It is like deeply imbued in deep Vedic philosophy, the Tattva Gyan aspect of it, and the nectar of devotion. So it's a complete literary work of Vedavyas, which gave him the satisfaction that, okay, now my work is done. So let's look at what Bhagavatam has to say about this concept. Bhagavatam states, Nirvinanam Gyan Yoga basically means success in the practice of Gyan Yoga is only possible for those who are at an advanced stage of renunciation. Okay, very clearly it states that. Now, what does it mean? Advanced stage of renunciation, what does it mean? So let's look at it. So, furthermore, our scriptures define what does it mean being in the advanced stage of renunciation, and this is a test for ourselves basically to see if we are focused on the Gyan Mark aspect of it. We have to meet these criterias even to have an eligibility or an entry point. We cannot cover all of these. Some of these we'll cover tomorrow. At least I'll introduce the different aspects of it, and then we will go a little deeper into that. These are the aspects that, regardless of which path you are on, you would need. But then they are not an eligibility criteria. You can progress on those as you progress on those paths. It's not an entry barrier for you at that point. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So let's look at what it means. So here's a gate. You need to enter this gate, right? So this gate has to be opened for you, which is called the entry. And what is the entry criteria on the path of Gyan Yog is what we are going to look at. So who need to be at the advanced stage of renunciation is what Bhagavatam is saying. Let's go deeper. So the entry point for Gyan Yoga, there are 2 V's. Let's start off with 2 V's. What are those 2 V's? The first one is Vivek, the discernment or the discrimination. It has to be spot on, not a work in progress. You need to have this Vivek. You have to be situated in this knowledge in order for you to stake a claim or eligibility for Gyan Marg. And what is that Vivek, which is being talked about? It is a deliberate, continuous intellectual effort to distinguish between the real and unreal, the permanent and the temporary, and the self and the not self. Okay, that knowledge has to be there in your head all the time. The second aspect of it is, as one of the prominent Gyan Yogis said, was Vairagya, dispassion, detachment. It is cultivating non-attachment, indifference towards the temporal, which is temporary objects of the worldly position and the ego mind. So it says that only when the mind is absolutely free from attachment of all sorts, that true knowledge begins to dawn. So Gyan Yog, the ABC of Gyan Yog starts when you are in a very advanced stage of renunciation. Not that you continue to think yourself as a body and we are in work in progress and deep attachments in the world and all those things still exist and you're saying I'm on a Gyan Marg. No, you have not even met the basic criteria to even pursue this path. Okay. Let's go a little more deeper. This is a little high level statements that we have given. Let's make it a little more tangible with some very, some of the things that we can really relate to quickly. There are 6 mental practices to stabilize the mind and emotions and to develop the ability to see beyond the illusions of Maya. There are 6 practices that have been illustrated. And we need to meet each one of these criteria to actually be saying I'm a Gyan Yogi. Let's get started on these ones. Sham and Dam. The tranquility, calmness, control of mind, ability to keep the mind peaceful, no reaction to external stimuli, and the Dam, the restraint and the control of senses. As you see, our senses, how they torment us. So you should have a good mastery over that, or you should be at the advanced stage of that mastery. Resist the control of the senses and training the senses to be used as an instrument of the mind. Let's understand a little more. It's a good principle. If you go through Swamiji's minds, the 7 mindset book. So here is a bridge, as you can see. You go from one to another. The Shama aspect of it, the stimuli. Stimuli is an external trigger that we get for anything. And then what happens is a the reaction. If you look at it, there's absolutely no gap for most of the people. You get a trigger, you react immediately. Is there a gap? More often than not, no. It's just a matter of finding those buttons that trouble you. And whenever those buttons are pressed, you see this invisible bridge exists. You are not even able to find out what happened. It's almost like, what do you call that? Sneezing. Do you have control over that? No, right? So you get a stimuli and you react. And that becomes the story of our lives. Now, what our scripture says, even in the path, regardless of which path you take, this is a mastery which we have to, regardless of which path we follow, we need to get better at. However, in the Gyan Marg, you need to have mastered it. At least you should be in advanced stages of it. Even to say, I've started, practicing Gyan Yog. Now, what our script basically, Swamiji has beautifully explained this concept. I love it. Like, if you look at it, as you see, there is a bit of a gap between these two. So this is the stimuli and this is the response. From react, it has become response, right? Reaction, and then you have a response. So there's a bit of a gap. Now, if you're able to introduce that little bit of gap, then amazing things can happen when this gap is introduced. That's synapses. This is the synapses, right? They call it, I think it's a biological term. When you break the synapses, you just introduce a bit of a gap here. A lot of good things can happen. Divinity can start act in between. Amazing things can happen, even if that gap is of few nanoseconds. The problem happens when there's absolutely no gap. So that is the real challenge around. We say, right, trouble. Actually, we are all are walking troubles, in the sense that the moment our button is pressed, we fall into this trap. But a Jnani, a person who is in an advanced stage of renunciation, is able to dissociate themselves with their emotion immediately. They don't ride that emotion just like that. They're able to take a step back. So this quality has to be harnessed to an extent that you may not have perfected it, but you need to be in really advanced stages of it. That, the worldly matters don't trouble you just like that, because the practices that are being asked for in Gyan Yog require your level of the maturity level of your mind and intellect to be at this stage. This is the first thing that we're talking about. And if we don't have restraint over that, we are work in progress, and we're still experimenting with our own self to understand ourselves better. We are reading ourselves. We have started reading our emotions, and we are trying to put in certain practices in which will help us introduce this gap and the ability to respond, then react. Then Gyan Marg is not for you. Okay, that's the first criteria. As I said, there are two V's, Vairagya and Vivek, and it translates to those 6 aspects. The first aspect is the stimuli and response aspect of it. So that is the first one you can think about. The second one is, yes, Sandhya, you had a question? Maybe you can share some tips and tools as well, how we can get better at this. Please go ahead.
I had just one question, just to clarify. So you said that this is the entry point for Gyan Yog, but when this restraint is existing, will they know whether it is a seed which is kind of hidden versus burnt?
That's a good point. That is why it is said, it is not said they should have perfected it. They need to be in advanced stages. Right? So the burning aspect will happen only with surrender. Even Jnani has to finally surrender to God because they cannot conquer Maya. So when you reach the peak of Gyan, then you grow wings of bhakti and fly. That is the only thing remaining after that point, right? Gyan has a limit. So Jnani, in order for you to even contemplate on the self, you need to cut off these distractions, and you need to be at a very advanced stage. Operating in this kind of a world, if you are not advanced level renunciate, you have not harnessed your abilities to an extent where you can focus on self, right? Aham Brahmasmi, and those vakyas that they say, then you really can't make much progress, because there are 2 problems with that. One is you are going solo, cutting off God's grace. You are relying on your own. And second is that you have not really developed those advanced, what do you call that, techniques of harnessing your mind to be able to make progress on that path. So both need to be met. But Gyanis, finally, they have to, in order to burn the seeds, they have to do a Sharanagat to God. That has to happen. This is just talking about the entry point part of it, right? If you simply sit back and say, I'm God, right? You'll be able to make progress, at least towards self-realization, if you are in advanced stages for these, in some of the attributes that we are talking about. Yes,
Duryodhanji has raised hand.
Duryodhanji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Sorry, I joined late, Nitinji, but my question is that you are saying 6, like the eligibility for Gyan Marg, you have to fulfill these 6 conditions. And why to first walk on this path when we already know that this is very difficult as compared to...
This is a good question, and we will get to that. Okay, this is a good, very, 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 very valid question, because these are bona fide paths as illustrated in Bhagavad Gita. Right, all 3 are bona fide. The Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, they are bona fide path. So why? Very valid question. We'll discuss that. So great point, Rahul. The other aspect of it is Dam, control of senses. So if you look at it, it's strengthening of the mind to be able to resist the control of senses, and training of the senses to be used only as the instruments of the mind. So if you remember the Kathopanishad, those horses basically trained mind, where you have taken control over the rein, where those horses are not having a free hit wherever they wish. That is another stage that is needed. So if you look at it, each sense, it seeks its object. Vishay, Indriyas, they seek their wishes. But when you can restrain them with knowledge, it's not that you don't have to watch TV, or you do that with knowledge, right? And you know what is beneficial for your soul, and you are not the soul. Am I doing? Basically, that question has to be perpetually planted in your head. Am I doing it for my soul, or am I doing it for my body? Okay, that discrimination, that vivek that we spoke about, has to be there always. Okay, then you are basically making progress in the Gyan Marg, or you are good to even start on the Gyan Marg. So with the control, you can actually eliminate all the vishyas of indriyas and actually be able to utilize your indriyas to the extent that is required for your sustenance and not beyond that. That is another criteria for Gyan Yoga, which basically talks about, let's talk about this concept now. I think there were 6 I wanted to bring in. But before we get into that, yes, let's get to Rahul's question. If that is the case, then why it's so difficult? Then why do people get attracted towards this path? Why do we have this path? See, it is given in Bhagavad Gita, and then people do get attracted towards this path. What is the reason for that? Let's have a bit of a discussion. Let's exert our mind a little bit on that. And while you do that, let me bring up something else as well I wanted to share with you. Yeah, please go ahead. In the meantime, I'm searching for something.
Radhe Radhe Rahulji, please go ahead.
Yes, Rahul.
Is it more favorable to our intellect to question all those concepts and try to correlate? Probably in the beginning we might get some answers, but at the end for sure we have to do bhakti, develop love for God.
Yeah, that is one of the reasons. Of course, it's like Swamiji explains beautifully, right? Somebody tells you that if you have to do for health benefits, you will get a lot of health benefits and a lot of oxidants and cleansing of your body and all that stuff by doing anulom vilom like this. You'll say, so simple. If something is simple, it cannot be so easy, right? But you say, no, you know what, you have to take your hand like this and then take it around your arm like this and bring it around your head, and then if you do it right, it will be really cool. You'll say, now it makes sense. So our mind has a bias towards simple things. Easier things, free things are useless. Okay, so yes, that is one of the reasons for sure, and it gives you a sense of satisfaction, right? Other day I was talking to somebody, said, I want to experience creation. So now, did God create us to experience creation or for a bigger purpose? That is the question that needs to be. Yes, it gives us a sense of satisfaction. We are doing something. I'm experiencing something metaphysical beyond this body. So yes, it gives us a sense of satisfaction, and then that is one of the reasons. Great point. Let's look at some other reasons as well. Now, if that is, it is a bona fide path too. Okay, we are not trivializing the path as such. Okay, so let's look at some other aspects as well.
Okay. Can I go ahead?
Sure.
Yeah, I just had one point to add. Another thing, I think in Gyan Marg, probably anybody can take that up to start with when they think that they can go ahead with it. But for Bhakti, you also need grace in order to get started. Without that, even if you want, probably you may not get started with it easily. So
true, very true. In fact, Gyan, Bhakti, Karam, they all go hand in hand. We will conclude this session by bringing in all the ingredients that are needed on this path. When I'm talking about Gyan Marg, I'm not belittling knowledge. Bhakti is, you have to, 50% of the battle is to understand the theory. If you don't understand theory, no, you cannot progress. So 50% of the battle, Gyan is needed. Right? Binu, Jane binu hoye na partiti, binu partiti na hoye priti. So knowledge is important. However, the Gyan Marg, when I talk about, it's pure knowledge. You just rely on contemplation. You cut out God's grace. You say there is no grace. There's no aspect of grace. You work with your consciousness. So yes, that's another aspect of it, where one of the key ingredients that are needed to progress on this path is cut. So when you do Nirgun, Nirvishesh, Nirakar God, if God is Nirakar, can light bestow grace? No. And Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, I will meet you the way you contemplate upon me. He said, if you wish to meet me as a light, I'll meet you as a light. The flip side of light is you are cutting out the grace aspect of it. So if you actually progress on this path with the belief that my efforts are good enough and I don't need your grace, there's no concept of grace, and you have tied God's hands, then God said, all right, be my guest. You keep on trying, I'll meet you as a light when you perfect your devotion. In fact, God without Yogamaya is the Nirakar aspect of it. You add Yogamaya to the grace part of it comes as well, right? So that aspect is latent, and that is not latent because God cannot manifest it. It is latent because God has to reciprocate the way a devotee wants to see him. Now, devotee says, you cannot grace. You are light. I cannot. So God said, fine, you continue. And the day you figure it out, good. If you not, then I'll meet you as light. Yes, Sahadevji, I think Duryodhan Sahadev, we have some Mahabharat going on. Are you guys coming from some kind of a Natak Mandali today, or?
Yeah, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe
Radhe
Sahadev.
Radhe. Radhe Radhe. Rahulji put Duryodhan, so I kept Sahadev, our characters from online skit.
Okay.
I think Rahulji is mastering at acting. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, coming to this, okay, I missed the half an hour of the lecture. It would be great if you could summarize later during the session. But why we get attracted to, why most people get attracted to this path? Probably we are used to being independent, right? We don't want to be submissive. So that's the answer.
Because the Adharshila or the foundation of bhakti is humility. You are no one. You are as high, helpless. That doesn't come very intuitively to us. All along our life, we've been told you are somebody, I am somebody, right? Self-esteem and all that stuff. So yes, it is very counterintuitive for us and very difficult concept to pick up as well. Right? God is called Dinanath, but we don't even consider ourselves as Deen. God is called a Patit Pavan, but we are everything but Patit in our heads. So the day we feel we are Patit, God will immediately purify us. The day we feel we are Deen, He will immediately become Dinanath. But the problem is our pride and the ego aspect of it, that we are somebody, stops us. So in Gyan Marg, it becomes very convenient. Right? You are doing something. I experience something. I'm doing this. So it helps you. And pride is anyway going to be there. Right? Unless you surrender to God, the pride aspect will not be removed at all. So yes, that's another part of it. It gives you a sense of accomplishment that you alone have every power within you to do that. And that is a little more satisfying for most of the people. So that's another reason people get attracted towards Gyan Marg. Okay, I'm a classic case of that. Okay, I was cut out for Gyan Marg, and I'm fortunate that I got pulled into Bhakti at the right time, because otherwise it would have been tons of baggage to unlearn. But I understand, I can appreciate that part, the kind of satisfaction you get when you're trying to do it and intellectualizing it and experimenting on your own and cutting out the God and Kirtans. But you're very lucky because you're in Bhakti Marg. I'm telling you that you guys have hit a lottery and you don't have to unlearn a lot of things, which is a good thing. Yes, Rahul, you have some question?
Rahulji, Radhe Radhe, go ahead, please.
I think there is one more reason that not all the souls are blessed to receive this divine knowledge, and that too Nitinji and then Swamiji and Maharajji. That is for sure. Yeah. Then we are trying to see which path is available. Okay, we hear from our friends. Okay, focus on that. And so.
You see, Swamiji Maharajji has made it. If Maharajji used to do only Kirtans. Now, people who are at the tipping point of God realization are already saints. They can relish that nectar. They don't want to hear anything other than those Kirtans. But for people like us, ordinary people like me, you will not get attracted to Kirtan because we are not pure, right? So to make it palatable for people like us, they have to descend down to the ABC level. And when they start clarifying the theory, automatically a little bit of understanding you start getting attracted to that. It's only because of Maharajji who could make this profound knowledge so easily accessible to us in a manner that you can, in a very logical, rational manner. Otherwise, this is very, very difficult. I'm telling you, you can spend tons and tons of life dabbling in theories and those concepts. Sometimes you don't realize because it is made so easily accessible to us. But when you come across somebody and you go back, the kind of doubts, questions, and things people do, then you realize how far, thank God, you're saved from that, because it can really be a wild goose chase otherwise. It can be very tricky. Yes, SSSG, please. Seva sadhana and satsang, right? Very nice.
Yes, Radhe.
Radhe.
Yeah, I have one question. related to intellect. Sometimes means it is seen that in the path of devotion or in the path of love, we start seeing divinity in vulgarity also sometimes. So we start discounting ourselves that I am seeing divinity in vulgarity. And sometimes it goes on. Then how to counteract those thoughts? Because we shouldn't see, we very well know that this has not to be seen or something like that. This we have to prohibit ourselves from going to such places or to watching this and this. But sometimes your love starts overflowing so much that you say, by I'm seeing divine in this also, I'm seeing divine here also, I'm seeing divine in everywhere. So nothing starts looking bad from that angle.
So that's an interesting thing you got. I mean, so somebody starts seeking vulgarity so that they can see divinity in them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, I means, yeah, sometimes like some songs or some any attractions are there. We succumb to it and then give a logic saying that the divinity is present everywhere. So that dilutes your what do you say, path of sadhana or something like that.
See, again, for as long as we have not become Hans or Paramhans, this is just a hypocrisy, I would say. A Hans is the one who can truly extract divinity. He can extract he sees water and milk both and extracts milk. Sees the water out. And Paramhans only sees milk everywhere. Those are very advanced stages of devotion. If somebody is on this path, they barely started, it is not possible that they are subjecting themselves to things which are more the subjects of our senses and saying they're seeing divinity in that. If they're seeing divinity in that, why don't you, feed them something like, what do you call that? Maybe chapati of mud one day and say, why don't you enjoy it? You should see divinity in that as well.
Yes.
Why selective choosing of divinity only in the things you want to see? You should see divinity even in a slap that they get from somebody or humiliation that somebody subject them to, or if somebody serves them, a mud chapati one day. All of that should be divine in that case. So test it out. Other things should also, they should see divine in other things also. But if they're selectively seeing divinity in things that are pleasurable to their senses, it's called hypocrisy. And I mean, you don't have to prove it to anybody. It's your own journey, right? Who are you trying to fool around with? So,
yeah, okay. So one like we say, purity of thoughts will means one of the reasons, means one of the cause of purity of thoughts is also what goes in your stomach, means good food, sattvic food, everything. Now it is also said, or I have come across, that one who prepares food, his feelings or his intentions also go inside the food, and whatever food we consume, that uh, you are also affected by that. Now in most of the cases, uh, due to say work pressures or whatever it is, due to laziness, I can call sometimes, maids are cooking in most of the homes. Now that maid is working for money, so it is very difficult to judge her feelings of, we can't say, because she is working in 10 places, she has to do quickly and go. So while she is preparing, now we are, on one hand we are reading such pure scriptures and all those things. So to become pure also you need inputs, like your food,
yes, I
your
understood.
habit to become pure. Then if we object this to our household people, sometimes they may not take it in the right spirit. So for cooking for say few people also.
Understood.
So
What's your name? What's your name?
I'm Subodh. So I'm Subodh.
Where are you joining us from?
I'm from Pune.
Okay. No, I understood your question.
Yeah.
See, this concept is true. The consciousness in which it is prepared, it translates into the taste and becomes part of your body as well. That is why when you eat in restaurant, you don't get the same as mummy ke haath ka khana, right? People, they say that because it is prepared with a lot of love and affection. That is true. Very true. Having said that, you got to be practical around this as well, right? Like, now, if I look at Swamiji, he eats foods all around the globe, right? From different people, different hands, and not everything is prepared that, okay, it is being prepared for Swamiji, right? It is for general public. So these things do have effect, but not to an extent where we start worrying about these. Right? When you are in Raganuga Bhakti, these things just take a back seat. They have effect for people who think too much about it, right? All these stars, angoothis, food, if you become paranoid about that and lose the essence of it, that is developing love for God, we lose that aspect. Similarly, people say, onion, garlic is bad. What do you want? Are you taking it as a medicine because it is good for your heart, right? It is good for cholesterol. Or are you taking it for the sake of your tongue? Because you cannot have food if you don't have onion and garlic, because I don't enjoy it. Really depends on what you are taking it for. Right? So these things do not have impact to an extent that they will derail your spiritual journey. No. Raganuga Bhakti, you focus on developing love for God, everything else will support you. They have effect, but not to such a big extent that it's a make and break for you in your spiritual journey. That's that much I can tell you. And we have to focus on the things we can really control. Bottom line is, see, whoever has prepared it, if you're offering it to God just before having food, one quiet moment with God, that thank you God for giving me this food, may I have it as your remnant, as your prasad. Then you partake it. You still think that maid's consciousness will overpower what the consciousness you put in that food because of offering it to God and taking it as a prasad? Of course not. So that is the right way to approach, rather than getting paranoid about small things in life which we really can't control, and we got to be practical around that as well, right? So that's how at least I would say that. And I have heard multiple times from Swamiji and multiple places to basically be able to say it with assurance that these things do not matter too much beyond a point. Hope that answered your question, at least to some extent. Okay. What else then? See, the
There
Gyan
is one,
of it is, yes, please go ahead if there is any. I wanted
there's
to.
just one question from Manish, if I could quickly read it. So is Gyan the approach of a Advait philosophy? They see themselves as God, Aham Brahmasmi. Is my understanding accurate?
True. A Gyani, if you look at it, Vedant Gyanis, they will say Aham Brahmasmi. That is right. I am God. That is the way they approach spirituality. Aham Brahmosmi, Soham, Shivoham, and Tattvamasi, I am that. That is the practice they follow basically. And those are some of the Brahma Vakyas today. Now, they are bona fide paths. Now, if you're in some other yug, obviously there are people who can perform austerities and lift themselves. But the point here to be understood is they can progress spiritually. Finally, the yoga is the key ingredient in all the path. And yoga means bhakti, devotion. So whichever path you pick up, finally you have to surrender to God and you have to do bhakti. Without doing bhakti, or like in Patanjali Yoga Sutra also it is said, Ishwar Paridhana, basically you have to surrender to God. You cannot really progress. And these paths are bona fide paths. Through Gyan Yog, you can realize God. But in Kali Yuga, it is not a recommended path because it is full of tribulations. And like I said, I've just given you two. I'll pick up the four more and the most mighty ones. That just by hearing those, you will say, okay, thank you very much. I cannot meet this criteria. So you will say bye bye to Gyan Marg if you understand the knowledge what our scriptures are telling us, because those are tough callings. So those four things, Sham and Dam, we spoke about it today. Another 5 to go basically, and that we will discuss tomorrow. Will tell you that you need to be in the advanced stages for that, even to pursue Gyan Marg. Otherwise, it's just trying to fool yourself. I'm on the Gyan Marg. You cannot. And in Kali Yuga, there have been very few people who have truly been Gyan Yogis. It's very difficult, exceedingly difficult to understand, more difficult to practice, and exceedingly difficult to make anybody understand, right? Everything, if you ask in Gyan Marg, they will say words have a limitation. It is anirvachaniya. Okay, what practice to follow? Anirvachaniya. What do you contemplate on anirvachaniya? Okay, what do we need to do? Anirvachaniya. Everything becomes anirvachaniya. Okay, there. Because it's very difficult to understand. The easy thing is, now in Bhakti Marg, although the entry barrier is fairly low, but it will truly make you the the most perfect a soul can become. Increasingly, you have to let go of yourself. And Jnani continues to work with himself. I am doing it. In Bhakti Marg, we have to reduce that part. So fundamentally different. You say Soham, Bhakti person will say Dasoham. Then Gyan Margi will say Sada Soham, he'll say Daso Dasoham. So that thing continues. We say we are Das, Das, and they will say I am that, I am that. So Bhakti Marg, although the entry barrier is fairly low, in the sense that it is open for everybody. Do we say that you can't sing Kirtan if you don't know Tal Sur, or you are from this profession, or you are not at the advanced stage of renunciation? No, everybody can sing Kirtan. Can we say you can't chant, recite God's name? No, everybody can recite God's name. So everybody can come in. But as you progress, you will understand Bhakti Marg. When you have to start working on yourself and purifying yourself, then exceedingly it starts becoming difficult as you go along. But entry criteria is available, and especially in the age of Kali, the Yuga Dharma is the Harinam Sankirtan. That's the only way to go. Any other practices you can keep trying around it, but it's usually not a safe bet. And the other aspect of it, Kriya and all, we spoke about it. You are dealing in the material world there. Siddhis are material world. Any realizations you have, they're all material. You have not touched even a drop of spirituality there. So those paths are laden with danger, fraught with danger at every step. It's like walking on a sword. Very, very dangerous, because it takes advanced stage of renunciation just to be starting. And ironically, it has become a USP. If you look at it, a lot of spiritual gurus who have massive followings are the ones who don't talk about God. And that becomes the USP. Right? The moment you bring God into a discussion, people are, oh, why do we have to bring God in everything? But the point of the matter is, you have to bring God into the mix to complete the puzzle that we are trying to solve. And if you don't talk about God, then yes, it's a good point to get people initiated on this path, at least, spirituality, people start exploring that dimension, but the buck will stop at God. The sooner we start imbibing it into our practice or the path that we are, the better off we'll be in long run. That is the whole message around it. So we'll continue with this discussion. I'll pick up the 5 more aspects of it. What are the entry criteria, those ingredients that are needed, and then we will put it all together, because we have to look at it in perspective, because knowledge is needed, faith is needed, devotion is needed, bhav is needed. All these things that we are talking about, they are needed on the path of spirituality. However, they are not deterrent for you to begin with in the path of bhakti. So we'll put it all together. Any other questions anybody has?
Can I quickly make the announcements?
Sure, please.
So first of all, we have Janmashtami celebrations coming up here at the Radhakrishna temple in Dallas. There will be number of events, right from Krishna Leela depiction exhibitions, Dahi Handi, and I think from 18th to 20th we will have many of these also broadcasted online, so people who are not here can also attend those events, and the ones who can manage to come here at Dallas, I would especially encourage that you can experience the bliss in person. Swamiji will also be present here in person to celebrate Janmashtami. Then immediately after Janmashtami, we have the life transformation program on the theme of science of happiness. So whoever can come and participate in that in person, that will also be very beneficial. And finally, we will have the Dallas retreat, which will be available for online participation as well. That will be in September, the Labor Day weekend, from 3rd to 5th, I guess. September, yeah, that's it.
So yeah, online retreat, I think Swamiji is going to cover the second half of the second chapter, 7th chapter. So like I said, it is as good as attending in person. Obviously, you cannot do the parikramas and all the nature walk that we goes along with it. But if you are tuned in, you can cut out the distraction, put your noise cancellation headphones on. It is a very, very blissful experience. I enjoy it, and I was able to appreciate it. It cuts out a lot of distractions. When you put it like that, and you can enjoy that bliss. So
Yeah, I can see heads nodding for West Coast retreat online engagement, I guess, right? So clearly it is very useful and beneficial.
Right. So technology has picked up, which is a good thing, right? God sometimes get things done through people. Um, right. The other day, Swamiji was talking about British Empire. It united the world for all the misgivings. I mean, all the bad things it did by colonizing the entire world. One of the good things that came out of that was at least there is a one unified language, English, that we all can communicate in. And then Bill Gates, he made Windows so popular that we don't have to worry about operating system. Think of it, if you were in for each of your laptops or mobiles, if you were to worry about, okay, which version of Zoom should I, okay, is it compatible, it is not, and then the language barrier and the operating system barrier. So all that has been unified. And we are actually reaping the benefits of it, that we can so easily communicate as if we are, seeing each other face to face, live. And so technology has taken that leap, which is where the material science comes in, right? It is an enabler for spirituality as well. To do avail that, it's a beautiful opportunity. And Janmashtami, look out for some of the interesting videos. You may see some familiar faces there. Okay, we are creating some promotional materials around it. Okay, it may evoke a laugh or two, but do check it out as well when they come out. Yes, Rahul, you had a question.
Yeah, Rahulji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. One of the best USPs of attending the retreat online is you get the best seat right in the front, and you can be very close to Swamiji. And the other thing is that after the retreat, you get the exclusive Zoom interaction with Swamiji, which some people might be wanting to have. So I think then we don't have to think about that and just register for the Dallas retreat.
See, in person, you may hear, you see Swamiji, right? Like if you get the front seat, that's great. You see him, you're hearing it, acoustics are pretty good. But then there's an occasional noise or two you see from around, or people moving around. Here, it's like direct channel from his mouth to your ears. You can just tune in to the bhajans and the lectures, and it's an amazing experience for sure. All right. So Gyan Yog, I think we covered a little bit of it. We will continue tomorrow. I hope you are able to appreciate how difficult it is. Um, and then we will put it all together in context of the shloka, how it is, why it is advisable, and how does it benefit if you are in the path of devotion. And in the path of devotion, I'll tell you one more thing. In Gyanis, they contemplate and then they acquire knowledge about the self by their self-effort, and through, negating the senses, mind, and all those processes. I'll tell you the beauty of Gyan Marg. There's a stage in Gyan where the knowledge will get revealed within you. Okay, that is the beauty of God's grace. You don't have to acquire it from 10 different places, download it, read this, read that. It will just get revealed within you. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. He's the wisdom, basically. He enables that wisdom. He's the facilitator for everything, right? And it's like when you're ready, the knowledge will be revealed within you. It's like, okay, you have not studied it, you have not experienced it, but you just know it. How does that happen? God does that. It will start happening. And that is the beauty of Bhakti path. Because you are taking help from somebody whose creation you are in, who has enabled you, your life to begin with, who has given you this opportunity, and you're saying, okay, I will take your help only, as opposed to thinking I'm a big deal and I'll do it on my own. So that makes the whole difference.
Yeah, just to add, Rahulji says, Gyan or Vairagya, Putra hai Bhakti ke.
Very true. In Bhagavatam, they are both becoming used. You've seen that malnutrition, as if they've gone to Somalia and lived there for a decade or so. They become malnutritioned. Why? Because people, they don't pursue Gyan, and people do not have Vairagya. They are so attached to everything around them. So they have become very weak. So Bhakti Devi says, okay, what to do now? So that is how the Bhagavatam starts, by the way. Yes, they are both the Putra of Bhakti. So Gyan Vairagya will be automatically bestowed to you when you do Bhakti. Gyan will come, Vairagya will also come. You don't have to do it through your contemplation and all that stuff. It will just automatically come. And in Bhakti, even Bhukti and Mukti will start following you. Just imagine the power of Bhakti, what we are talking about. Right? People think that bhakti is for people who are less intellectual, people who don't understand the bigger principles. That is the usually the argument I come across from a lot of people. My take is totally different. I say that bhakti is done by both the spectrums. Either people who don't want to understand too many things, or it's not required for them to do, kintu parantu and logic. They just have faith. Right? If you go to your dadi, nani and all, they just have faith. That is needed for them. So on one hand, you have those. And on the other hand, you have people who are super intelligent, like Swamiji. They reach a level and they said it's common sense. You have to believe in God. It's common sense. But in between, I would say the mediocres, they dabble with other paths until they come to a realization that bhakti is the way to go. Okay. Are we good then for today? Closing prayer?
Yes.
Great. So look forward to our discussion tomorrow. It will get more interesting in the next 2 sessions, so do check it out. It's going to be really fascinating, some of the concepts that I came across during Swamiji's different lectures. So I've tried to put those together. So please do come in. The day after, we'll have a lot of good discussion around this shloka. Yes, anybody have?
And just I forgot to reiterate about the feedback tracker. So please put in your comments, feedback, questions, suggestions in the feedback tracker. I've posted the link in the chat box.
Yes, please. All right. Thank you then. Let's do our closing prayers for the day. They started ending it on time for a change, so that's nice. Only 5 to 10 minutes late. Any volunteers for the closing prayers today? Okay, Sandhya, please go ahead.
Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you. Wonderful. So thank you everybody for your participation and for giving this opportunity. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful day and a great rest of your evening. Radhe
Yes,
Radhe.
thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.